All right. Ecclesiastes. Chapter number 7. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Verse 9. Be not, let's see here. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Ecclesiastes 7 verse 9. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. If you desire to have a good name, then don't be in a big hurry to lose your temper and get upset. It's better to keep your cool. Solomon warned us about our anger and how it can make fools out of us. And of course, I'm sure that everybody can testify to the fact that since you've been alive, you've gotten angry and probably made a fool out of yourself. I know I have. And I think we left off last time going over the fact that there's people express their anger in a variety of ways. Psychologists say that the #1 cause of mental problems and depression is unresolved anger in their patients. In the book, When Anger Hits Home, the author gives vivid illustrations of how each of us express anger by introducing readers to 4 different types of personalities. Stella, the straight shooter, she expresses anger at the sound of her irritations. These folks may be loud or calm, but they get angry quicker than others. Saul in the Old Testament sounds like this type of person. And then there's Dan the deflector. He expresses his anger in such a way that those involved in causing the anger don't even know about his anger. He vents his anger toward other people instead of venting it on the actual source of anger. And then there's Karen Keeper. She holds her anger inward until she is with people whom she feels safe. Then she expresses it sometimes with crying and looking for sympathy. Then there's Randy Revenger. He likes to vent his anger by evening the score. He don't get mad, he just gets even. He waits for the opportunity of revenge and enjoys it. Let's see. Symptoms of anger: irritability, impatience, a raised voice, glaring eyes, hurtful words, explosive actions, cutting off communication, argumentation, clenched teeth. Angry people can stir up the emotions of people, inflaming them to the point of bitterness and hostility. They do this because they find confidence by enlisting people. They use the combined anger of a group of people to pressure others to get their own way. It makes no difference whether it's a good cause for justice or a bad cause to satisfy vengeance, personal greed, or selfish desires. They stir up strife and contention. Solomon said, an angry man stirreth up strife, and a furious man aboundeth in transgression, in Proverbs 29, verse 22. It's interesting to note that when you stir things in a kettle, like this, or pan, you stir the spoon back and forth or in circles. When you think about it, this is what constant anger does to people. It causes people to keep repeating or rehashing in their minds the faults of others and their grievances against them. We also find that when something stinks, like garbage or manure or mud pits, if you stir it up or step in it, it causes the stench to get worse. Uncontrolled selfish anger has a way of stirring up a stink too. Anger is a catalyst for immediate action, and many times that action is foolish and destructive. It's difficult for people to keep quiet and react slowly to an offense when the flame of their anger has been fanned. There's 4 common reasons for stirring up contention and anger. 1, revenge or retaliation. Number 2, the removal of a person from a position of responsibility. Absalom's anger stirred up others to take the throne from David because of his jealousy and quest for power. And then the ruin of a reputation. And then reparation. Person is owed something but has not received it. And anger, they fight to get what that's owed to them. King Solomon states that we're to avoid close fellowship with angry people lest we learn their ways. Their anger can influence us and corrupt our character. When they lose their temper and self-control, they set an example for us of the improper way of handling conflicts. An example which should not be followed. The verse for that is in Proverbs 22, verse 24. Proverbs 22:24. Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go. Verse 25. Lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. So Solomon warned us to not go into partnership with an angry man, for you'll regret it. Do not buy or sell to an angry person if you can avoid it. Why cause yourself a perpetual headache? Do not even go to dinner with such a person. Do not marry an angry man or woman, for they'll cause you more pain than you can imagine. This is why it's wise to take your time when you're considering marrying somebody. Find out what the person is really like. Solomon also mentioned that we're not to hang around a furious person. The word fury, Proverbs 22:24, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go. The word furious means burning, anger, rage, indignation, wrathful, poison. The word poison is most adequate because bitterness and rage poison other people. They poison other people. Hebrews 12:15, looking diligently lest any man fail the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. In Hebrews 12:15, the word defiled carries the idea of contaminated, polluted, or poisoned. Rage ignites the anger and impatience of others. Hot-tempered leaders generate hot-tempered followers. They get people stirred up and fighting. The fighting can cause you to say or do things that you'll regret for the rest of your life. Your actions will leave you trapped, especially when you have harmed someone else. Once the damage is done, it's done. An angry person is seldom reasonable. A reasonable person is seldom angry. Best way to deal with somebody who's a hothead is to give them a cold shoulder. Many Christians get themselves into spiritual trouble because they keep company with bitter, hot-headed people. They become infected with hatred without realizing it sometimes. For this reason, God stays away from these kinds of folks. God says to stay away from these kind of folks. They will bring you down spiritually, emotionally, and eventually physically. A boy once asked his dad, he said, "Dad, how do wars begin?" Well, his dad said, "Take the First World War," his father said. That got started when Germany invaded Belgium. Immediately his wife interrupted him. "Tell the boy the truth. It began because somebody was murdered." The husband drew himself up with an air of superiority and snapped back, "Are you answering the question or am I?" Turning her back upon him in a huff, the wife walked out of the room and slammed the door as hard as she could. When the dishes stopped rattling in the cupboard, an uneasy silence followed, broken at length by the son when he said, "Daddy," he said, "you don't have to tell me anymore. I know how wars begin now." Instead of being angry, it is better if we have self-control, especially over our temper. See, like I said before, we're going over things now that get down to the nitty-gritty about how we behave in our Christian life. As I mentioned to you, since I've been the pastor here, we've gone verse by verse in Daniel. Daniel's got a lot of prophecy. The Antichrist, the tribulation, the millennium. We've gone in Revelation verse by verse, Romans verse by verse. The book of Acts is a transitional book. We went verse by verse in those 28 chapters. We've got Romans. We've got a lot of doctrine. But now Ecclesiastes is just practical, down-to-earth living. Self-control. Peter spoke about the importance of having self-control. The Bible don't use the word self-control, it uses the word temperance. And he said we're to add temperance to our faith in 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 5 and 6. So, if you desire to know the Lord Jesus Christ and become an effective Christian, then you need to add temperance to your knowledge. Temperance to your knowledge. When I first got saved, I was 20 years old, and the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I knew a lot of Bible. But I was like a little 5-year-old boy with a loaded .357 Magnum. I had a lot of knowledge, but didn't have a lot of temperance and wisdom and so forth. And temperance means one who masters his desires and passions, or one who has self-control. Paul stressed the importance of having self-control in order to avoid spiritual defeat. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 9:27, "But I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway." Castaway is put on the shelf. Paul wouldn't talk about losing salvation. He's talking about being put on the shelf. Castaway. When the governor of New York, from 1907 to 1910, his name was Charles E. Hughes, when he was beginning his heroic campaign to secure the passage of his anti-racetrack gambling legislation, we're talking over 100 years ago, many of his so-called friends warned him of the violent attacks he would certainly be subjected to were he to adopt such a course. They said to him, "The opposition will stop at nothing. They'll defame your character. They'll ruin you politically." "Gentlemen," the governor said, "there is only one man in this world who can harm Charles E. Hughes, and that man is Charles E. Hughes." Well, the governor hit the nail on the head and reminded all of us that we can be our own worst enemy, especially when we lack discipline and self-control. Knowing God requires discipline and self-control. When we lack self-control, then we make decisions and choices that we regret later on because we have either heard our testimony, hurt others, or have grieved the Lord by our actions. Discipline and self-control are necessary in knowing the Lord and being fruitful for Christ, because it takes discipline. It takes discipline to spend time with God, to study His Word and pray, to subdue our pride, to submit to the needs or desires of others, to sacrifice for Christ, to stand for the Lord and what's right. So we preached and taught, Brother Frank taught this morning on that. I preached a message on it. To share the gospel with the lost, and to squelch our selfishness. So Solomon warned us that we're weak and vulnerable to failure when we lack discipline or self-control. Proverbs 25:28 is a great verse. He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. If a person doesn't have, you have people like that all over this country. I mean by the thousands and by the millions. They have no rule over their own spirit. They are like a city that's broken down and without walls. The book of Proverbs gives us insights on areas where we need to have self-control. Insights on the blessings of discipline and the problems that come from our neglect. Number 1, control your temper or anger. Number 2, control your thoughts or attitudes. And there are several verses for all these things. Control your tongue or articulation. Control your thirst and taste for food or your appetites. Proverbs 23:1-3, when thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is before thee, and put a knife to thy throat. If thou be a man given to appetite, be not desirous of his dainties, for they are deceitful meat. There was in the Confederate Army a famous colonel. They said that man, wherever he went on the battlefield, always had his men in absolute command and in perfect obedience. Never did he fail to win out wherever they placed him. It seemed impossible to defeat him, so marvelous was his control over his men. When the war was over, this southern colonel went back to his old home and went down into the depths of drunkenness. He ruined his life until his family was scattered and he was alone on the earth. An hour came in the city of Charleston when there was a great riot in the whole city square that was crowded with people. The police tried to cope with them and failed. Someone shouted, "Let's find the colonel." They found him in his usual haunt, half intoxicated. They dressed him in soldier's garments, and the mayor himself pinned the badge of authority upon his coat, and he said, "Now, Colonel, I want you to go and quell this riot, and I'll give you authority." They mounted him on a white stallion and sent him off to the city square. He rode through the crowd giving his orders, and in 20 minutes the whole square was as quiet as a graveyard. Within an hour he had taken off his uniform and was down in the saloon drinking again. Within 2 months he died alone, slipping into a drunkard's grave. What a tragedy. He could control other men on the battlefield or in a riot, but he couldn't control himself. Had no rule over his own spirit. It's like broken down walls, it says there in Proverbs. We just read the verse. No boundaries. He became his own worst enemy because he couldn't control himself. All right, then going on in Ecclesiastes 7, verse 10. This guy, we're going to change gears and go a different direction. I mean, Solomon, he covers about everything. I'm telling you what, this guy, Ecclesiastes covers about everything in life, I think. 12 chapters. Just about everything. Ecclesiastes 7:10. Say not thou, what is the cause of the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. If you desire to have a good name, then guard yourself against what a lot of us, I mean, I'm guilty of it sometimes. Guard yourself against living in the past. That's what he says here in Ecclesiastes 7, verse 10. Say not thou. Don't say it. Solomon says, don't say this. What is it? What is the cause that the former days were better than these? He said, don't say that. For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. Focus on what is happening in your life right now and make sure your choices are the right ones. That is better than living in the past. Solomon issued this warning in this verse. He observed people in his day that longed for the good old days. Remember the good old days? Because they believed they were better off than their present circumstances. These folks became obsessed with the past. Solomon made it clear that such thinking was not wise at all. When the second Jewish temple was being rebuilt, many people rejoiced. But the old Jewish men wept and cried. They remembered the glory of Solomon's temple and compared it to the one that was being built before them. Their memories of the past robbed them of their joy in the present, right now. So where's that at? Ezra chapter 3, verse 12 and 13. Ezra 3, 12 and 13. When people go through trials and tribulations, when they are suffering heartache, they sometimes reach for the past, which were perhaps happier times for them. Some folks wish they could go back to being a kid that's free to play and not have to deal with the pressures and responsibilities of being an adult. Someone wisely said, the good old days are the combination of a bad memory and a good imagination. The good old days are the combination of a bad memory and a good imagination. You don't remember all the details about that stuff back 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. I'll get into that in just a minute. A closer look at the good old days reveals they had bad days too that have been forgotten. The past has many wonderful things to cherish, but it also has bitter events and mistakes that we wish we could forget. There's not anything you can do about past failures, but you can deal with the events of your life today. Don't live in the twilight zone of the past. Live in the reality zone of what's happening today. Today is tomorrow's good old days. Today is tomorrow's good old days. Whatever's in the past is in the past. On December 6, 1865, just months after the Civil War ended, the 13th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, outlawing slavery in the United States, was ratified and became the law of the land. However, this did not mean that every state approved the ratification of the amendment. You know which state didn't? The legislature of the state of Mississippi was bitter over the defeat of the Confederacy and rejected the amendment. 130 years passed. So that takes you to 1995. That's right. 130 years passed before the state of Mississippi took action. By 1995, Mississippi was the only state in the U.S. that had not approved the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Senator Hillman Frazier, a member of Mississippi's Legislative Black Caucus, said, quote, "I think it's very important for us to show the world that we have put the past behind us." And they went ahead and ratified it. One day a man said to his friend, "Say you look depressed. What are you thinking about?" His friend replied, "My future." The man then asked, "What makes it look so hopeless?" His friend replied, "My past." He couldn't enjoy anything, the future or the present, because he was thinking about the past. We're not to get bogged down in the past and what happened yesterday. The past is a rudder to guide your way, not an anchor to drag you down. Learn the lessons from your past that will help you to grow and make good choices in your future. We're to take advantage of the opportunities we have today to live for Christ. Horace, the famous Roman poet, did not say, "Seize the past." No, he said, "Seize the day." British French writer and historian Hilaire Belloc warned, quote, "While you are dreaming of the future or regretting the past, the present, which is all you have, slips from you and is gone." Say that again. He said, while you're dreaming of the future or regretting the past, the present, which is all you have, slips from you and is gone. I know some Christians, since I've been saved in the past 45 years, I've come across people that constantly kick themselves in the backside for past failures, sins, and mistakes in their past. And I say, have you asked God to forgive you? God cleanse you of it? Go on and live for God. But that's the devil that digs that stuff back up and tries to make you feel guilty, so he'll destroy your joy and victory and peace of God today. We're not to be paralyzed, polarized, or pulverized by our past. Paul taught this, Philippians 3, 13 and 14. "Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended." In other words, I'm not perfect. But this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forth unto those things which are before, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. Paul said, I count not myself to have apprehended. He did not claim to have arrived at his spiritual growth and accomplishments. He wasn't saying, I'm perfect. He said, I count not myself to have apprehended. He said, I'm not saying I'm perfect. He knew there was more to be done. To achieve what God wants us to do, there are some things we must forget from the past. Paul mentioned forgetting those things which are behind. This phrase is in the present tense, indicating that Paul kept on forgetting day after day. Because the devil will bring that up to you every single day about your past. Now, when he said forgetting those things which are behind, a lot of Christians think, oh, we're not supposed to even think about them or forget about them. They're not even supposed to come into our minds and all that. No. This word forgetting does not mean obliterating the memories of the past, but a conscious refusal to let the things of your past consume your attention and hinder your spiritual growth. That's what Paul's saying. He knows they're going to come into your mind once in a while. Forgetting the things behind does not mean erasing the sins of the past. It means to break the power and influence of the past by living in the present with an eye on eternity and not letting our weights of victories as well as failures slow us down. In a race, the runner's progress is hindered if he keeps looking back. You've never seen a guy in a race look back behind. I mean, he might kind of look like that. He might kind of glance to see who's behind like that. But he ain't going to turn all the way around. He's losing time. I mean, those guys win by tenths of a second. The runner's stride is broken when he looks behind him. He can trip or lose his balance. Looking back gets his focus off the finish line and upon his opponent. This is what happens when we dwell on the success and failures of our past. We either rest on some accomplishment as though we have arrived, or else we live in a sagging spirit of regret over past failures. This kind of thinking hinders us from being what God wants us to be and doing what God's will is for our lives right now. God wants us to forget and press onward with a determination that each day will find us more like Jesus Christ. Never look back on your yesterdays in such a way that it slows your progress. Look at the verse again, Ecclesiastes 7, verse 10. Ecclesiastes 7:10. Say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. Now, people say, weren't the good old days wonderful? Boy, I wish we'd go back to the good old days. But he says, don't say that. In other words, don't think about the good old days being better than the ones that are here now. Esther 4:14 says, who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? God has us here now. He didn't have us born in the 1700s when Charles and John Wesley and George Whitefield and different people were born in the 1700s. He didn't have us born in the 1800s when Spurgeon and preached and D.L. Moody and a lot of the great preachers in the 1800s or the early 1900s. God has us in the kingdom for such a time as this. He must think we're able to handle it. Amen? Now, it's natural for us to think back 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago and think about the good events and good things and good feelings and think, boy, those were the good old days, and things sure have gone to pot, haven't they? And of course, spiritually and morally, they have in our country. I'm not denying that. Anybody that inquires wisely about the good old days realizes that they weren't so good after all. The reason they seem good is your mind has a way of not seeing the past closely. All right, your mind plays a trick on you. The grass always looks green on the other side. You cannot see the past very closely because you cannot remember everything that went on 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. All right? Our minds have a way. Our minds have a way, and psychologists call it a defense mechanism. A defense mechanism. Our minds have a way of hiding or covering up things that you don't like to remember. So in a way, the good old days do seem to be the good old days, but if you remember every single thing about those so-called good old days, you might not say that. In some areas, at least. They were just as full of trials and troubles and tribulations and heartaches, sorrow and disappointment as the present days, generally speaking, I'm saying. I know there's exceptions. There was some joy there too, but that's what is easy to remember. If you send a kid to the store for a can of spinach and a Hershey almond candy bar, I don't know why I said that, because man, I'm starting to crave one of them right now. A big old cold glass of milk. Man, I love them things. If you send a kid to the store for a can of spinach and a Hershey's almond candy bar, guess which one he's likely to forget?
Spinach.
That spinach probably didn't make no dent in his brain at all. He probably didn't even hardly hear that when you said that. But he heard that Hershey almond bar, or Snickers bar. I love Snickers bar too. Paul said about the former days, Philippians 3:13-14, forgetting those things which are behind, pressing toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God, Christ Jesus. Now, don't get me wrong now. I love antique stores. I love Cracker Barrel. People like to go into Cracker Barrel stores and eat, and they like to look at all the gift shop and look at all the things they got and all that. It's nostalgia because it makes them remember 50 years ago. It makes them remember when Grandma had the rocking chair, you know, that's the antique rocking chair, and the antique furniture, and the antique stores, and the antiques, and all that. My wife, she loves antiques. And, but anyways, I can't hardly buy her any, because they're so expensive. But anyways, you know what makes antique stores and nostalgia stuff such a big hit with Americans in the past 50 years? Because they live in the past. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying you're wicked if you like antiques. I'm not saying you're wicked if you like to go to Cracker Barrel. I love to go to Cracker Barrel and eat. All right, I look around the gift store a little bit. My wife does, but I like to go where the eating is. Amen. They live. The present is so discouraging to some people they can't focus on it, so they drift into the past, where they can only remember the good. And that's nothing wrong with that. You say, well, preacher, what's wrong with that? Remember the good things in the past. Yeah, remember the good things in the past. But a lot of people act like that everything in the past, the good old days, was great and wonderful. It wasn't. So anything that brings back fond memories of the good old days is what Americans love, because the present days are full of sadness, sorrow, and trouble for a lot of people. The old general store, they have the country's, is it the country or the world? I don't think it's the world, it's the country. It's the nation's oldest general store, and it's up in New Hampshire. It's in Bath. I think the town's Bath, New Hampshire. Bath, New Hampshire? Bath, New Hampshire. You can probably Google it. Don't do it now. The old general store. I've been to it several times. They got fudge, and they got, I mean, this store looks like it's 180 years old. And I do like to go there, I have to admit, when I go up there and preach. Northern New Hampshire. And they advertise it as the country, the nation's largest, or not largest, oldest general store. And they got everything in that thing. All kinds of different little food, old-time things, little antique things, and just an old general store. Sitting right there in that little podunk town. But most Americans talk, listen to this now, most Americans talk about things that have happened in the past. And Christians who spend much time in the Bible talk about things that are going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying it's wrong to talk about the past. I'm not saying it's wrong to, but I wouldn't dwell on it. You know what the past is like? I'll get into it here a little bit better. It's like a rear view mirror. Woo! You better look through that great big windshield you got in front of you. Future. What do? You glance in that rear view mirror? You just glance. Once in a while, just glance in the rear view mirror. But I wouldn't stare too long. Might get in a wreck.
Yeah.
Yesterday is here and gone like the lingering smoke of a blown-out candle or the flash of the cheetah as it blazes across the African grasslands. You ever seen a cheetah run? I think they can run like 65 or 70 miles an hour. I mean, they're beautiful. I've seen them on these animal shows. You've never seen anything like it in your life. An animal that can run that fast. Like the icy water of a mountain stream that cascades over roaring, misty white waterfalls, yesterday has come and gone over the cliff of time. Its journey is past, never to be repeated in the same way. Like the calls, C-A-W-S, of crows that sit as sentinels in treetops, the cries of yesterday screech out to us about our mistakes and failures, warning us to not repeat them again and make it difficult for us to forget them. Like a pesky mosquito buzzing our ears, yesterday intrudes into today when we fall behind in our tasks and responsibilities. Its nagging buzz barks out its orders like a Marine Corps drill sergeant. Yesterday's voice also has a sweet song of joy, like songbirds that raise their heads and elegant voices to heaven, giving glory to their Creator. Good memories from the past, filled with laughter, love, and happiness, calls our hearts and minds to soar back in time, provoking a desire to return to those moments, to the good old days. The shackles of yesterday's flops can bind your heart for life if you know not the one who has the key to open the lock and free you from its chains. He who has the key is Jesus Christ, who said in the Bible, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." John 8:32. If the Son therefore shall make you free, you shall be free indeed. John 8:36. Folks, if you spend all your time thinking about your failures or successes of yesterday, then you'll ruin your tomorrow.
Yeah.
When today looks too long at yesterday, we are borrowing from tomorrow's time. When today looks too long at yesterday, we are borrowing from tomorrow's time. Dr. Tony Evans is a black preacher. He's on radio and television. And he said this. He pointed out that yesterday is like a rear view mirror, like I was talking about a moment ago. He said yesterday is like a rear view mirror. When you go somewhere in the car, you use a rear view mirror. A rear view mirror shows you what's behind you. You need a rearview mirror, but you only need a rearview mirror to glance in. Glance in it, not to live in. You don't move forward by focusing on a rearview mirror. You move forward by focusing on the windshield. If you live in a rearview mirror, you'll hurt somebody. But in front of the rearview mirror is a much bigger piece of glass called the windshield. The windshield shows you where you're going, and that's a lot bigger than where you've been. Woo! Hallelujah! Let me say that again. The windshield shows you where you're going, and that's a lot bigger than where you've been. Got to shout and run the aisles on that one. Don't let yesterday mess up today, which in turn will ruin tomorrow. While you're driving forward in your Christian life, every now and then look in your rearview mirror. You have to. Take a peek in your rearview mirror to see what's behind you so that you don't make a wrong turn while you're moving forward, but just don't stare too long. Don't be absorbed or anchored down with the successes and the failures of yesterday. We all have made plenty of mistakes in our past that could sink us. Over and over again, we're reminded of the pain of yesterday's failures in the Bible. Psalms 31:10, "For my life is spent with grief, and my years with sighing. My strength faileth because of my iniquity, and my bones are consumed." That's David's repentant prayer after he committed adultery with Bathsheba. Don't let that be your testimony. Focusing on what is happening in your life today. Someone said, no one ever sank under the burdens of today, but add yesterday and tomorrow to today, and it can capsize your life. Jesus said, take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof, in Matthew 6:34. Dr. Osler, O-S-L-E-R, Osler, a famous physician of years past, he made a helpful observation. He noted how ocean-going vessels were able to seal off various sections of the boat so that a leak could be contained in only one part of the ship. It wouldn't spread to the rest of the ship. Though damaged, a ship could still make it to safety. Just so, he suggested we need to develop the capacity for sealing off our yesterdays and our tomorrows that fuel the fires of worry. We need to learn to live in the compartment of today alone. God is the great I am. Exodus 3:14. Not I was, or I will, or I will be. The Christian who lives with him today in the present tense is the one who will be free from worries about yesterday, about today, or tomorrow. Psalms 90 verse 4, for 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it's past, and as a watch in the night. So your life passes quickly like yesterday that has come and gone. It is swift like dark shadows that journey through the day, only to vanish into the shadows of the night. David said that in the eyes of the Lord, 1,000 years are swift like yesterday that is quickly passed. And that's true. I've said it to you before, I'll say it again. I told my wife the other day, don't any of you be offended that are older than me. But I told my wife, I said, in 5 years, I'm going to be 70. Now, don't be offended. Please don't be offended. But 50? Really, I wasn't worried about 50. It didn't sound old to me. Even 60. But now 65? And I said, Tony, In 5 years, it just seemed like the other day you and I got married. It seemed like the other day I was in my 20s. Is that the truth? Honestly. In 5 years, now 70s, I'm sorry, don't be offended. The 70 sounds a little bit old to me. To me it does. Now, don't be offended. But at 50 and 60, I really didn't. But oh, Sister Dottie, please don't say that. Please don't say that. And Sister Lillian, if she was here, she'd say, wait till you get 98. I hope I make it to 98. See, that'd be 33 more years. Think of it. David said, we look at our yesterdays that have come and gone. For many of you, your children that ran through the house, played games, laughed, giggled, and cried, they're gone now. Been gone for years. Their rooms are empty. The halls are silent, even though you can hear their voices fresh in your mind as you look at their pictures on the walls. Like the smoke of a candle that has just been extinguished, the realities of yesterday are still fresh. The chairs at the dinner table are vacant, leaving your heart empty, wondering how quickly yesterday has passed. In fact, yesterday is like the water that flows through your fingers from a spigot of a well. You try to catch what you can, but there's a great deal that you lose and cannot hold in your hands. This day today will be your yesterday tomorrow. Make this day count for the Lord. If God gives you tomorrow, make tomorrow count for the Lord. Because any day could be our last day. You say, that's so depressing. Not if you're saved. I've had people say, well, preacher, I know I'm going to heaven and all that, but I just dread death. I want to die, and, am I going to suffer and this and that? God will give you the grace.
Amen.
He'll give you the grace. When Stephen was getting stoned to death, he said, Lord, lay not this sin to their charge. How can a man say that when he's being stoned to death and blood, brains, and guts are splattered everywhere? How could those people in the 1500s during the Reformation that were burned at the stake, John Huss and Savonarola and bunches of them, literally burned to the stake, burned alive? How could they be singing the Christian songs as they were being snuffed out in the flames, burned to death? God will give you the grace to get over to the other side. You'll leave here, God will give you the grace. So why isn't He giving me dying grace right now? Because you're not dying. An earnest Christian doctor one day called to see an old man that he had frequently visited him. The old fellow was suffering from an attack of bronchitis. The doctor made the necessary inquiries, and after promising to get him some medicine ready, he was about to say goodbye. It was then that the patient's wife asked, "When must John take the medicine, sir?" The doctor said, "Let me see, you're not very ill. Suppose you begin to take it a month from today." "A month from today, sir?" they cried in astonishment. "Yes, why not? Is that too soon?" "Too soon? Why, sir, I may be dead then," said the patient. "That's true, but you must remember you really are not very bad yet. Still, perhaps you had better begin to take it in a week." "But, sir," cried John in great perplexity, "begging your pardon, but I might not live a week." "Of course you may not, John, but very likely you will, and the medicine will be in the house. It'll keep, and if you find yourself getting worse, you can take some. I won't charge anything for it. If you should feel worse tomorrow even, you might begin then." "Sir, I may be dead tomorrow." "When would you propose to begin, John?" the doctor asked. Well, sir, I thought you would tell me to begin today. Begin today by all means, the doctor said kindly. He said, John, I only wanted to show you how false your own reasoning is when you put off taking the medicine which the great physician, Jesus Christ, has provided for your sin-sick soul. Not a month from now, not a week from now, and not tomorrow. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. 2 Corinthians 6:2. Because we're not promised tomorrow. Proverbs 27:1. Boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. Thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. You ever started your day in the morning and you thought, man, this is going to be a wild day. You don't know what a day may bring forth. Think how long people have neglected the remedy that God's provided. For years they've turned away from Jesus. They've said, next week, next year, or when I'm on my deathbed, I'll seek the Lord. They have chosen another time rather than the present. But the present is the only time that a human being has. And that's why a person ought to get saved now, right now. All right, we got 3 or 4 minutes here. Ecclesiastes 7, verse 10, I think I expounded that verse pretty well here. Say not thou, where is the cause? What is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. All right, verse 11 and 12. We just mentioned a couple things here and we'll close. Wisdom is good with an inheritance. You know, a lot of people have gotten an inheritance, but because they're a fool and they don't have any wisdom, the inheritance didn't do them any good. And we'll get into this more next time. And by it there is profit to them that see the sun. For wisdom is a defense. Oh, that's interesting. We'll get into some things about that. And money is a defense. We'll get into that. But the excellency of knowledge is, quote, comma, that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. There's a lot in them 2 verses. All right? Receiving an inheritance can be a great blessing, but also a burden too. If the person receiving the inheritance is a fool and is not wise. Without wisdom, money can destroy a person. The prodigal son was a fool, and the inheritance he demanded from his father ruined his life because he was ruled by his lust, not by wisdom. Give me the portion of goods that falleth to me, he said. His lack of wisdom caused him to waste his wealth away, leaving him nothing but the shirt on his back. Receiving an inheritance with the wisdom to be a good steward and know what to do with it can be a tremendous blessing from God. Having wisdom will benefit your life and make God's provisions that He has given to you more profitable, more powerful, and more productive. People turn to a variety of things to defend themselves, including guns, knives, self-defense training, zappers, pepper spray, and bodyguards, to name just a few. Rarely, however, will people say they are depending on wisdom to defend themselves, but Solomon says that in these 2 verses. I just read them. Yet money and wisdom can help to protect your life. How does that happen? Money can help you purchase things to protect or help you physically, but wisdom provides protection or acts as a shield too that can strengthen you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Wisdom has a much more powerful effect on your life than money does. Wisdom. That's why it should be pursued and prized by us more than money. Wisdom comes from God. Ask God. If any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God that giveth to all men liberally. Liberally. He's not, you don't say, well, I gave you some wisdom. That's all you need. I'm not going to give you any more. I'm running out of it. He giveth to all men liberally. And upbraideth not. James 1:5. How much better is it to get wisdom than gold? Proverbs 16:16. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom. Proverbs 3:13. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. Proverbs 4:7. Proverbs 8:11. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. Ecclesiastes 7, verse 11. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it there is profit to them that are under the sea of the sun. For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense. But the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. That's it. Any questions?